JD, thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah.
I don't know where to start. As before you hit record there, I was like I didn't know what angle I wanted to share with you because there's just so many things I want to talk about. But I think I want to talk about how starting my podcast just created a whole new life for me and connected me to my roots. My name is Vanny Whitchelo, and I'm the host and producer of Khmer Voices Podcast. I started it in October 2024, but it didn't just start in 2024. It started in 2020, when the pandemic
Yeah.
happened, and I was going through this existential crisis. Like, what are we doing here? I was sitting in front of the computer working because you couldn't do
You
anything
couldn't do
else.
anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my 2-year-old daughter was put in front of the TV. My husband and I are both in front of our computers, and it just did not sit well with me. And I kept telling myself that it's temporary. But then
Yeah.
as the situation went on, there was no
So
end in
temporary.
sight.
Yeah.
So I just questioned like what was the purpose of all this? I'm working and my daughter couldn't be in daycare because daycares were closed, but even eventually when they started opening things up, I still had this this itch in me to do something else.
Yeah.
And the Black Lives Matter movement was happening then as well, and Stop
Yeah.
Asian
Right.
Hate, like all these injustices that were amplified because, I just had more time to notice those things. Whereas before I
Yeah.
was,
Yeah.
out and about and working and socializing and stuff and just kind of going through the motions of life and never really questioning like, what am I doing? And I had these goals to, I was in the wine industry, or you know what? I guess I'll share it. I handed in my resignation last
All
week.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess. All right. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. I handed in my resignation last week. I was with the company for 7 years and I enjoyed it. I was selling fine wines to the liquor board and private liquor stores and restaurants, and just it was an amazing portfolio, and I had it
Yeah.
good. But since launching my podcast in October 2024, there I created this community, and I want to go back to like why I started it. I started because um, I was questioning what I was doing with my life. I just didn't see like why I would spend a minimum of 8 hours a day in front of the computer. And then I just started questioning like trying to figure out like who I was. And at that time, as I mentioned, the Black Lives Matter movement was happening too. And they were saying like how they don't really, there's their identity. There was the question of identity as well. So I was online
Yeah.
all the time and I'm like, you know what? I don't know what I'm doing with my life, but I know this isn't what I'm
This
meant to
isn't
be
it.
doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just started absorbing information. And then I was like, well, what else can I do? And that's when I got the idea like, oh, well, you know what? Us Cambodian people, we've gone through a lot. I don't know if you know our history, but
Not enough. Not enough to say. I mean, that's but before we started, I mean, that's what fascinated me was kind of the question that you had of yourself, that it was, you kind of know it from an outside lens, and I'm the kind of person that bothers me,
mhm.
because I know that there's another side of it that I'm not seeking out enough to find, or whatever's being given to me is like a rose-colored glasses kind of situation. It's like, here's the only bit that you need to know. What did you? No, don't forget that what you just heard.
Yeah,
This is it right here. So no, I'm guilty of that as well. And fascinated at the same
it's
time.
okay. You know what? We were silenced for a long time because, well, what happened was what people knew of us was that we went through a genocide. Our people killed our own people, basically. So an auto genocide. But I didn't, and people also knew us from the Angkor area, Angkor Wat,
Yeah.
the largest religious temple in the world.
Right.
So there's two things, the glory of our past and then like the just horrific event in the 70s from 1975 to 1979. So I didn't know anything else about Cambodia. It was just that dichotomy. And as I started just talking to people and reading more and just trying to understand my heritage and roots, I understood that there was outside involvement that was never really talked about. Like obviously I knew that we were colonized by the French, but I didn't know the events beyond that, and I didn't know the
Beyond that, yeah.
details beyond that, and I didn't know like the US involvement. I knew that the US bombed Cambodia, but I didn't know like why. And so, I started connecting all these dots, and I'm seeing a lot of parallels with what's happening
Yeah.
now and what happened to us, and also what's happened, in the 90s and early 2000s. And it's just it's 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 heavy
Yeah.
these times.
And it, like, to hear you say that, here's somebody that, I mean, like, I'm sure people look at you and like, well, what do you mean you don't know? But like that tells a lot too. And I'm sure we're all in some way, shape, or form, whether it's your own family history or just like the history of your culture,
Hmm.
or even just, the place where you grew up. Like, we just kind of take it for granted, I guess is the words that I'm looking for, that it's like, yeah, well, that's not that important, or I'll figure it out along the way. But it doesn't work like that. You kind of have to seek that out, no matter where you were or who you are or how involved we're, right?
Exactly. Like I would hear, stories from my parents, but they would only give a little bit at a time. Like I wouldn't have the full details,
Yeah.
and it would be the subject would be switched when it got too heavy.
Yeah.
So I
Right.
never had that full conversation with my parents with regards to what happened. And I
Yeah.
just recently learned that my mom was taken away from her home when she was only 16 years old, taken away from her family. So I never, and I'm thinking like, well, I never really understood that. Like I never understood
Yeah.
the severity of war growing up. They would just talk about it in passing. They would, like
Right.
my mom mentioned a couple times or a few times I remember that, every time she hears helicopters, it scares her because it brings back
Yeah.
memories of the bombing, bombings, I should say. Um, but yes, now that I've started this podcast, it's been and hearing stories of these my people that have
Yeah.
gone through so much. I understand it more. I understand why there's gangs um, in newly established communities. I understand why parents don't talk about what they went through and why the next generation doesn't know what happened with them.
Yeah.
And now that information is more democratic, I guess you can say, it's easier to figure that all out, but you have to kind of look for it.
Yeah.
And i'm I'm fortunate that I have this opportunity to share our stories because, as you mentioned, it was what we knew was always offered through the Western lens. So it was always
Yeah.
someone else writing about us. And now
Right.
I'm getting these stories direct from Cambodians, the Cambodian diaspora. And I'm discovering that, what I felt
Yeah.
wasn't unique to me. It's universal. And I'm listening to other podcasts that are similar, like that are not, that I guess are, yeah, somewhat similar, but, from different communities. And I
Sure.
see a lot of parallels in what they're going through and our community as well.
I'm gonna put you on the pedestal, but so don't feel like you have to be like a spokesperson for everybody with, but just a curiosity. But why do you think that is? Because I completely agree, and I can see it, for my own self, and I'm not a part of, any kind of a community that like can even come close to feeling that way. But why do you suppose that is, that we put this kind of Western spin on so many, and sometimes it's so extreme that it's like, if you didn't know enough information, it's like, yeah, I don't know what's going on here, but I really feel the same hatred that this person's trying to portray for this culture that I know nothing about. And sometimes it's just as simple as like, well, I guess it's not as interesting as I want to. I'm not going to learn anymore. But either way, it's the same thing that it shuts the person off from going, unless you really love to learn and really love to understand other people and be that empathetic, which is what we should all be. You can almost hear it that, in the rhetoric that we have, that's like, oh, you want me to stop talking and thinking about this. Okay. Why do you think that is? Like, why do you think we do that to certain cultures?
I'm not really understanding the
Not to make you be
question,
the
but
spokesperson, but just that idea that we westernize, the conversation,
well,
around like certain. Why do you think that we do
I
that? Like,
for
what's the
I mean,
purpose?
for in our instance, it's estimated that over 2 million people were killed. It's anywhere between 1.5 million to 3 million people, and the people that were killed were mostly mostly intellectuals, artists, and people that would have led the country into
Yeah,
prosperity. So, in terms of being able to communicate our heritage and our culture and pass that down, uh, it was very we there wasn't there weren't many people that were able to do that.
yeah,
And in terms of like accepting like the Western voice, I guess it's because that is the one that is put on a pedestal
yeah,
and the one that is legitimized, right? Like if you look at research papers, you can't just say that I learned this from my uncle or my aunt.
yeah,
Like these traditional ways of passing down information are not accepted as facts, Whereas, like, if a researcher went to study someone else and they went through this scientific quote unquote
yeah.
process, then that is considered a fact.
Well, we believe that now,
Yeah.
right? Yeah,
So I think it's important to get our stories out there and have people hear it straight from our voices as opposed to,
yeah,
yeah, having someone else tell it. Because regardless of your intentions, if you're not from the community, it's still going to be filtered through your
yeah.
lens.
And so, how do you operate and kind of get that story to come out? Because this is on the same plane as somebody that has a generational trauma of abuse or neglect or anything like that, but at the same time on a slightly different plane that doesn't make it better or worse, or your story is more important but a slightly more challenging to say, okay, are you ready to talk about it? Because just like with any story, I mean, it's not up to us, as the people that are receiving the story. It's up to the storyteller to decide that. And so how do you navigate that conversation? You have this like thought process. You went into this going, okay, this is absolutely a story that like people need to hear, but that might not be always the case, right? With people that it's like,
You know,
yeah, I agree with you, but I'm not ready to say this
it,
for whatever reason, right?
yeah, it's I actually found it easier than I expected. Like I didn't
Yeah,
So this podcast shines a spotlights on our achievements because when I was growing up, I didn't see that. And I
yeah,
couldn't resonate, or the stories that I saw in traditional media, I didn't resonate with. So I wanted to be able to provide that for, I guess, myself and future generations.
yeah,
Um, it just, with natural conversation, it comes out.
yeah,
People will want to share with what they want to share, and I think that they want to share for the community as a whole, to let
yeah.
the next generation and our peers know that we're not alone, and we're not alone in feeling this way. And um, it's about uplifting our community, and I think people want to be able to extend the hand because they didn't have that when they were growing up.
Yeah. And it sounds like, I mean, within your own family, that here's a story from your mom that you weren't even aware of. How do
No,
you?
I had to ask
How
her.
did you go through that? Yeah.
I still don't have the full story. I have
Yeah.
to ask her, and I asked her like, can we talk about you growing
Yeah.
up? I don't know what your childhood was like. Whereas, I know my mother-in-law's English, and she's very, open about her childhood, and
Yeah.
she had a good childhood, and she tells me stories about her time in Singapore and Italy and stuff. And whereas I don't know anything about my parents, and I know
About your own parents.
my parents-in-laws. I know the details of their life. So
Interesting.
yeah, yeah.
Well, we were
It's hard
like,
to
yeah.
it's hard to share traumatic
Yeah.
situations. And I know that there if you go and read up on what was done to people, like, you can imagine what happens during
Yeah.
war.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm also afraid to open like a can of worms that I don't know how to
Sure.
I don't know how to navigate.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, putting myself in your shoes, just even the topic alone, I don't know how I'd be able to sit with the story either. I mean, other than just kind of sitting back, which is okay too. But I mean, we don't have that experience. It's not completely far removed from us. As far as like when those kind of situations happen. But Afghanistan, Desert Storm, like those are the ones that come to my head. And even then, like I'm not at an age that like you saw it. It was in the news, but it was still one of those like, well, this doesn't pertain to me,
Mm-hmm.
so I don't need to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
Or, your parents were, let's, no, you don't need to hear this. So it was
Yeah.
one of the two. So it's still hearing somebody that's gone through it in the most extreme way seems like it's right out of the history books. Like this isn't happening to somebody that's sitting in front of me, or it didn't happen. I do the same thing when I see somebody that has, even just like a hat or a sticker on their car that says they're a Vietnam vet. I'm like, how is that possible? And what's going on with your life?
Mm-hmm.
It's just I can't even imagine. So it's just like you could just see the distance like happening. But sometimes I don't know, and I think we were talking about like beforehand that it's almost, I don't know, it's like where our like generation is when it comes to hearing the stories of our ancestors, whether that's a wartime story or just what did you do for fun. It's almost, I don't want to sound like extreme and like pessimistic, but it's almost like we're not interested in it. It's just we're so wrapped up in whatever's going on in our world. It's like I don't have time for you, mom.
Yeah, it's a pity.
You can tell me how much you like jumping rope later. I know, but
Do you
I
find
don't know.
that
I mean,
with
so
your group of friends or your circle?
for a lot of them, I mean, even just, I mean, but and even just listening to my wife, and talking about like the her coworkers, it's just it's very. But then even within my own, I mean, I can see, I'm in the most extreme case of life, situations for myself. I mean, I can look at the date now on my phone of when people stopped talking and asking if I was okay after my father passed away, and it was like at the best like 2 3 days after. And it you can sit there and be like just angry and like why don't you care, but at the same time you almost can't because it's just we're just so caught in. I had one family member like just, I mean, he asked and I only remember it because I was walking into the funeral home, and that's when he said something, and by that time it'd been almost a week. And I know that they had spoken to my mom, which is more important than me. But asked how I was doing. It was something like, "Hey, bro," or "Hey, dude," which was strange anyway to say to somebody after what they've gone through. But it was just like something like, "What's up with you?" or "How you doing?" And I'm like, so I just kindly was about as best as we can be. Thanked him for being a family. And the next response was, "I'll be going through the same thing as well. I understand." And I'm like, I looked at my mom. I was like, I want to be upset at this because it's like, no, you're not, and I'm not trying to take away your grief versus mine, but there is a different level. That's my dad. That's your uncle,
Mm-hmm.
so it was like, where's the awareness? And that's just so, and then you can just blow that up to the rest of the world. You just feel it sometimes that it's like, you're not interested in the generation unless you like skip a generation and they want to go back through a whole genealogy like conversation. And
Yeah.
it's like, well, hold on a second.
It's almost like we're just focused on the
Yeah,
wrong things, like we're not
yeah,
focused, we're so busy just going through the motions of life that
yeah,
you're not realizing, you're not slowing down enough to see like how others around you are.
Yeah.
And
Or in your case, like, I mean, we're just talking about celebrating, somebody, it's not like you're trying to find the worst or ask for any kind of like sympathy. It's just, hey, there's a whole nother like world that went on before you.
hmm
And you
hmm
don't have to change your world because you now know that there was, you don't have to do anything different. You just now have to go, oh, I'll bank that in my filing cabinet now that I understand something a little bit better. And so, I mean, just hearing like I mean, without, listening just a handful of episodes myself, I mean, you can hear it and then it just reverberates in just the way you mentioned you started this, that it wasn't like in your face. It was a, hey, like, let's just talk. Let's just, hear what's going on. And I think that just changes the dynamic, right? Of how we appreciate, other cultures, other people,
hmm
other human beings.
hmm hmm Yeah, this just talking to people, I've developed a community around the world now, and I feel like I'm in this like I used to be ashamed about being Cambodian because all I knew was the
Sure, I
genocide,
can imagine.
right? I'm like,
Yeah.
why would we kill our own people? I didn't know that like, the US had was involved in that prior to that happening, and they basically like made that happen. Like
Yeah.
indirectly, but still, I don't think they intentionally put the Khmer Rouge in power, but based on their actions,
No,
that's what
yeah.
happened.
Feels that way, yeah.
And that I was ashamed. And now that I know the details prior to what happened during that period, I'm not anymore. And I'm like super proud of our community being able to basically rise from the ashes because not only did the country had to start with nothing after 1979,
Yeah.
um, so did the diaspora. Like I came to Canada with nothing. I was only, how old was I? 3.5. And my mom's like, I only had $5 US.
Oy.
Yeah. So, we've had to survive, and a lot of us are now thriving. And I'm at this point in my life where, I consider myself thriving. I'm able to leave my full-time job and
Yeah.
start pursuing a more creative career that speaks to me, that
Yeah.
fills me with joy, and that
Yeah.
provides purpose.
I was gonna say, I mean, it's got to just feel, fulfilling, is what the way I would describe it too. I mean, it's just, and being able to do that. I mean, it's, certainly you could take it to like the next level of, well, I'm gonna rewrite history, and you're gonna know, what's going on in my culture's history. But then, where does that get you? It probably the same way as if you never spoke at all, right? But finding this like ground of just, I want to understand it. I want to feel great about it. I want to feel,
hmm
like this is something that I'm ultimately like not ashamed of. I think puts it in a different storytelling lens, and to me the most appropriate one, because it's just like, it's just education,
Yeah, like our
if you want to
culture
put
is
it
so
simply,
beautiful. It's like ancient, and
Yeah.
I I see like the borrowing from other cultures and the other cultures borrowing from ours, and it's gorgeous to see just the
Yeah.
interrelationship between like as far as India and China. Like we have elements of those
Yeah.
civilizations, but we see that those civilizations, we influence them in a way as well. So it's like we're all
Yeah.
human, we're not like this whole nationalism thing. It's it's nice that you're proud of your country, but it shouldn't divide you
Yeah.
between humanity.
Is that a strange? I mean, as you're talking to people, is that something that you see? I can see that too. That, going back to what we were just talking about, just not knowing the generation before you, but not even just knowing. We'd like to say that I'm Italian, like look at my last name, or, my mom's from there. But then if you went just a next step further and ask them just a slightly deeper question, not necessarily give a history lesson, then you find out where they really stood. And 9 times out of 10, I feel like that's where it stops. It's like, oh, wait a minute, you sounded like you were proud about this. Like, where's the line then? Are you finding that like people like that? It's kind of like unearthing this like like true, like you just said, you're not ashamed anymore. Like you're truly proud of the culture instead of just going that, well, they took it from our culture.
Hmm.
Well, hold on. Like this is beautiful that we all mesh together. Are you finding that that's kind of like once you dusted things off, like that is actually there, that people they do find this pride. Like it's just been kind of covered up by just these terrible situations altogether.
Yeah, there's this resurgence, or I guess renaissance of
Yeah,
Cambodian culture happening. Like we're celebrating, and we see how far we've come. But there's always going to be nationalistic pride, like wherever you go,
sure,
and
sure.
I think it all comes down to talking to others and being aware of where they come from. And you
Yeah,
can't I when there are people that are racist, like I actually feel sorry for them because
yeah,
they don't know that we're really all the same.
yeah.
Like I
you,
and
you just want to ask if they're okay,
yeah,
you know?
they don't know that they come off as ignorant either,
Yeah,
and just cruel.
yeah. So just to give that more of a spotlight, then, if we had to pull like one line from the history books that we're missing, or this westernized version of what we know about Cambodian people, what would you say? What in one like elevator kind of pitch that we're all missing, and could really like value and hearing, to kind of jumpstart the story for those of us that they've either written it off and it's like not like something we're interested in, because it was never shown to us as being interesting,
Yeah.
or just have flat out never even considered that there are other human beings on the planet.
Well, I think one of my guests put it very well. He ended the episode by reminding everyone that we come from greatness. So there's a lot that we can do because it's in our DNA. Like the resilience is in our DNA, the artistry, the creativity, it's in our DNA. So we come from greatness. So I'd like to remind everyone that that's what we are. We're great. We come from greatness.
Hey, thank you so much for just giving us a small portion of your story.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah.